In case you missed the last video, I dug up my Radius 81/110 out of my closet and powered it up for the first time in a couple of years. We also discovered that it had, at least a somewhat rare, Sonic Crescendo processor upgrade card. Well, before we install the drivers and test it out, I think this computer needs a teardown, cleanup, and most importantly, a new PRAM battery before this dead one explodes. I'll start by moving the snake of extremely long IDE cables to the side so I can remove the new bus card support bracket. This computer has a lot of things built in that I wish modern computer cases had. Expansion card slot support is by far one of them, as graphics cards always tend to sag. With the support bracket removed, next I'll carefully try and remove the three-way new bus card sandwich for examination and documentation. Thankfully, it did all come out as one unit without destroying anything. Next, I'll actually remove the IDE cables from the back of the CD-ROM drive and the 1GB hard drive. We'll set the mess of cables off to the side for now. We won't need this for a while. The power supply has its own holding tray screwed into the motherboard. The power supply sits on top of the holding tray and is screwed into the back side of the case and the holding tray. First, I'll disconnect the power to the drives and motherboard. Next, I'll remove the 4 or so screws holding the power supply to the back of the case. Then, I'll remove the screws that clamp the power supply unit to its holding tray. Once everything is removed, the power supply slides cleanly out. Bracket came out. The power supply holding tray has 2 screws holding it into the inside of the case, along with a few screws on the back side of the case. Once again, removing these allows the tray to easily come out of the case. With everything out of the way, we can now get a much closer view of the main logic board. It's strikingly similar to a PowerMac 8100 board, even with the same thermoelectric cooling setup as the 8100s. Next, we'll remove the logic board. There are a series of 10 screws that hold the logic board tray into the case by the back panel. I have already removed these screws, so the logic board should just slide smoothly out, as long as you remember to disconnect the power LED, CD audio, and speaker connections first. Alright, just so I don't forget, the floppy power was plugged in here. There's a little CD-ROM thing over here. Something else is getting some power from the front, it looks like. Oh, that's my power LED. Okay, I'll have to make sure that goes back in. I'm going to remove the front panel of the case now. Because the computer was dropped at some point, the metal reinforcing the plastic front panel is bent and warped. We'll fix that while the computer is taken apart. I think I can definitely get this looking much better. Okay, fully apart right now. It all sits on its own sled. There's the RAM. I'm replacing this battery while I'm in here. And let's see, you don't even have to remove any of these screws. Expansion slots, here's where my processor card's gonna go. Here's where the stock processor is. Lots of Apple chips on this board, despite it being a clone. Yeah, the whole back of it just comes out. Alright, so I have removed the metal shielding from the faceplate. So I chose not to show this process because I wasn't really sure how it was going to turn out, but there's some of these clips still on here actually. So these are a pain in the ass to remove. Pretty much at this age, they are not going to lift off cleanly. So the simplest thing to do, honestly, is to cut a tiny slit in them, and then you should be able to pretty much unwrap them and lift up. Yeah, I got 4 of them off this way. There's 6 total. One standoff unfortunately broke in the process, so I'll have to work on re-gluing it. It's actually down here is where the part of the broken case is, which is kind of why I started doing this in the first place. The case is pretty thick. I can push this back together a little bit, put some filler in here, whatever. It'll be fine. It'll live. Honestly, I probably won't even do that. The metal, on the other hand, took quite a beating. As you can see, this corner, not too bad. This corner, pretty whacked. Definitely not straight. Definitely gonna take some correcting. And there's a little bit of rust on it too, starting to form. Probably from that original drop that it undertook. Yeah, I'm probably not gonna film this either because this is gonna be pretty painful having to hammer this metal piece, but we'll see if we can get it fitting back together much better now. To bend the case back, I had to make it worse before I could make it better. I bent the metal out more so I could straighten it better, used a hammer to flatten the area, then banged the tabs back into place. It's about as flat as I can get it without doing any proper metal work. Since I don't know how to do that or have the equipment for that, this is going to be good enough. Because some plastic pieces had broken off, I decided to use a steel reinforced resin to reattach them. Some of you may know this as JB Weld, but if I said it by its name, I think I might be crucified. Turns out, JB Weld is extremely effective for what I needed it to do. This is one of the cases where JB Weld works great. After 24 hours, this will be cured and ready to put back together. While I was in there, I decided to add some JB Weld around all the other tabs that weren't yet broken just to reinforce them. Unfortunately, there was one snag that I didn't account for. As I was examining the parts getting ready to put the computer back together, I realized one issue. Yeah, what's wrong with this power supply? Well, in the next video, I'll show you how I repaired this sad looking power supply and at least made it stable enough to not short circuit itself. I'm honestly surprised this didn't become a problem sooner, but I'm glad I caught it before it was. Thanks for tuning into another video about the Radius 81110 Macintosh clone. Stay tuned for part 3 where I repair the power supply. We're in for quite a journey with this computer. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share my videos if you enjoy them.